In 1959, on the corner of 15th and Talman in Chicago's North Lawndale, a young man known as King Satan founded the Satan Disciples. The group started on the east side of Douglas Park, an area that still had a small white presence, while the rest of Lawndale was becoming predominantly African American. The first members were mostly Czechoslovakian and Polish youths, joined by Mexican teenagers who made up nearly half the gang. Some say the name came from the early Devil's Disciples, who later became part of the Black Gangster Disciples. But that's not true. The Satan Disciples had no link to them until 1978, when the Folk Nation Alliance formed. The real story goes that a local priest once referred to the group as Devil's Disciples. The name stuck, slightly altered, and the Satan Disciples were born. By 1960, the gang had expanded. They opened new sets at 18th and California, 14th and Washtenaw, and in the near west side at Taylor and Racine. Another strong section formed at 18th and Oakley in Chicago's Heart of Italy area, where early figures like Big Satch became known. Within a year, the SDs had a presence in 3 neighborhoods. Their main rivals were the Gaylords at 18th and Western, Ambrose at 18th and Throop, and the Latin Counts at 18th and Loomis. The Latin Kings weren't involved, contrary to what TV shows like Gangland claimed. In the early years, the Kings had no territory near SD neighborhoods. The bigger threats came from Ambrose, the Counts, and the Vice Lords. By 1964, the Latin Kings began pushing into Pilsen and Little Village, trying to claim 18th and 26th Street, but 18th belonged to the Satan Disciples. They defended their ground at 18th and California and expanded to 18th and Rockwell, keeping the Kings from taking over. The Kings eventually secured territory from 21st to 31st Street, but the SDs held firm. Even when the Kings converted the old Coulter Counts into the Coulter Kings in the late 60s, their reach stopped there. The Satan Disciples had proven they weren't just another corner gang, they were here to stay. The early Satan Disciples were known for their appearance, clean, well-dressed, and surprisingly well-mannered. They even had their own band. But when it came to enemies, everything changed. That's when, as they said, the horns came out. Their signature image, the baby devil with horns and a pitchfork, came straight from old comic books passed around among members. It became their symbol, paired with a name that carried weight and fear on the streets. Throughout the 1960s, the SDs stayed small but solid. They held most of their ground, except for 14th and Washtenaw, which they pulled back from to focus on 18th Street. The neighborhood's shifting racial lines also forced the original 15th and Talman set to close. As the decade went on, the Vietnam War drained some of their ranks members, either drafted or enlisted. But younger Mexican recruits quickly filled the gap. Still, it slowed their overall growth. Then came 1966, and with it, expansion. 2 members, known as Big Aggie and Little Aggie, moved into the Marshall Square area. Opening new ground at 24th and Washtenaw, it soon became one of the gang's most active and respected chapters, stretching along 24th Street from California to Western. The strongest sets formed at 24th and Washtenaw and 24th and Rockwell, with constant battles at 24th and California, where the Latin Kings also claimed territory. The SDs fought not only the Kings, but also the Artistics, Morgan Deuces, and later in the 1970s the 2-6 Kents and Cullerton Deuces. This rise on 24th Street matched the growing Mexican and Puerto Rican migration into Marshall Square at the time. By 1971 or 1972, King Satan stepped down and leadership passed to King Canary. In the early 1970s, a major shift hit the organization. A member known as Kingfish left the SDs and joined the Gaylords, taking several white original members with them. This defection created the 18th and Western Gaylords, born from fear as the old neighborhoods became predominantly Mexican. As the decade went on, Pilsen and Little Village grew more violent, gangs multiplied, and the streets began to change with the rise of the heroin trade. Some older SDs got involved, but the organization wasn't yet driven by drugs. Conflict defined the era. Ambrose and the Latin Counts fought for control of Pilsen, the Latin Kings pushed to dominate Little Village, and the Satan Disciples stood against all of them, even clashing with the 2-6 when they emerged around 1970. In 1975, the SDs expanded again, this time north, into the Westtown neighborhood. After the Gaylords left, the SDs moved in around Erie and Wood and Huron and Ashland, engaging in constant battles with the C-Notes. That fight marked the start of a lasting northern chapter. By 1977, they had also planted roots further south. opening territory at 42nd and Campbell in Brighton Park. From there, the Satan disciples spread deeper into the neighborhood, securing their first true foothold outside their original West Side base. The organization was no longer just surviving, it was evolving. By 1978, many original Satan disciples were behind bars, including some founding members. In April 1978, at Statesville Prison, a historic alliance was formed. Larry Hoover, leader of the Black Gangster Disciples, brought together gangs to organize both prison and street conflicts. The Folk Nation and People Nation alliances were born. The Satan Disciples already had a history with the Black Disciples dating back to the 1960, forging fights against the Vice Lords near Douglas Park. That pre-existing relationship eased the SD's entry into the Folk Nation. Reluctantly, they also joined forces with former rivals, the 2-6 and Ambrose gangs. For years, the SDs had been enemies with Ambrose. Violence ran deep. In 1974, Ambrose leader Louis Lehman shot SD members Mark Rodriguez and Fidel Perez in North Lawndale. By April 1978, however, the gangs were allies under the Folk Nation banner, uniting both on the streets and in prison. Soon after joining, the SDs adopted their first written constitution, influenced by the BGDs. Bylaws formalized proper conduct and allowed members to open legitimate businesses, echoing the methods of the Chicago outfit. This structured approach gave the SDs both stability and opportunity, a major advantage for the organization. The Insane Alliance also formed in 1978, linking the SDs, 2-6, and 2-2 Boys. Later, the SDs and 2-6 elevated it to Insane Gangster, ending much of the conflict between the two and opening channels for joint operations with the Black Gangster Disciples. By 1980, expansion continued. A new chapter opened at 51st and Wood and back of the yards. Fueled by a wave of Mexican migration, the SDs faced rivals like the Saints, Latin Kings, and Bishops defended their new ground. That same year, members from K-Town moved to Garfield Ridge near Midway Airport. Supporting the growing Hispanic community in Sleepy Hollow, they recruited local youths, formed the Sleepy Hollow SDs, which remain active in the area to this day. The SDs also strengthened alliances with Ashland Vikings, Maniac Latin Disciples, Milwaukee Kings, and Harrison Gents in West Town during the formation of the UPCI, solidifying their influence across multiple folks' factions. Leadership changed again around 1980 to 81. King Canary stepped down and Agapito King Aggie Villalobos took control. Under King Aggie, the Satan Disciples expanded throughout the 1980 and 1990 into new Chicago neighborhoods, suburbs, and even other states. Even after his 1983 incarceration for armed robbery, King Aggie continued to lead, guiding the organization as membership grew into the thousands. By the 1980s, the SDs dominated the heart of Chicago neighborhood, technically distinct from Pilsen, though most outsiders lump the areas together. The heart of Chicago runs from Western Ave to Ashland and Blue Island Ave to 16th Street, while Pilsen lies east of Ashland. West Pilsen, largely heart of Chicago, became virtually all SD territory, solidified after the Gaylords and Stone Kents left. Other Pilsen gangs tried to expand west of Ashland, but were met with heavy resistance. Bullets and beatings kept most away. The only gang able to challenge SD presence along 18th Street in this area was the Bishops. By the end of the decade, the Satan Disciples were no longer a single neighborhood gang. They were a structured organization, deeply rooted across multiple Chicago neighborhoods, with influence stretching into prisons, streets, and legitimate business alike. On November 7, 1986, tensions between the Satan Disciples and 2-6 erupted into a historic conflict. The spark came when Ambrose members attacked 2-6 over a personal dispute in Little Village. 2-6 retaliated by crashing an Ambrose party at 63rd and Washtenaw in Marquette Park. Gunfire erupted. Two boys were shot, one fatally, and 2 Satan Disciples were also killed. This marked the beginning of a legendary ongoing war between the Satan Disciples and 2-6. The 2-6 gang dropped Insane from their name, becoming Gangster 2-6. While the SDs kept Insane Gangster and the 2-2 Boys remained insane with the SDs. During the 1980 and early 1990, the SDs expanded beyond Chicago's west side into many suburbs. By 1992, leaders Bobby D and Waco D established SD chapters in Cicero. Other suburbs included Westmont, Downers Grove, Aurora, Bridgeview, Waukegan, West Chicago, Rockford, Kankakee, Calumet City, Berwyn, and Blue Island. Some suburban sets were short-lived, while others thrived and remain active today. Expansion brought new rivals: Saints, Noble Knights, 12th Street Players, TP Boys, and other Vice Lord faction. In 1987, the SDs fought violent wars with the Harrison Gents and Milwaukee Kings in southern West Town. Conflict peaked in 1994, resulting in arrests of members from both sides. That same year, the SDs clashed with the Maniac Latin Disciples, who enlisted the Latin Jivers and the Milwaukee Kings, but the SDs prevailed. By the mid-1990s, they had become the dominant gang in southern West Town, though clashes with the C-Notes and Latin Kings continued. In 1988, the SDs absorbed part of a Bridgeport gang called the Mighty Projects, gaining territory at 32nd and Litwanica in the Bridgeport homes. At the same time, rivalries with other folks' factions in West Town worsened, straining previous alliances with Harrison Gents and Ashland Vikings. The Insane Alliance expanded further in 1989 and 1992, inviting City Knights and Insane Majestics respectively. However, tensions rose with the Tutu Boys, who officially left the alliance in 1992. In 1993, the SDs established a lasting chapter in Gage Park at 59th and Spalding, started by members from the K-Town area, many of whom had formerly been Ridgeway Lords. This chapter engaged in heavy conflict with the Crown Town Latin Kings. King Aggie was released from prison in 1995, but internal disagreements arose over leadership. Many members preferred Danny Gizmo Valencia as the new leader. In November 1995, Gizmo was shot and killed, allegedly by SD members loyal to King Aggie, marking the end of formal kings in the organization. Through the mid-1990s, the SDs continued violent conflicts with the Harrison Gents, C-Notes, and Milwaukee Kings. By this time, the gang had grown into several thousand members, becoming one of Chicago's largest street organizations. Section closures occurred selectively, either due to low profitability or heavy police presence, while profitable areas were reinforced. Operating with organized precision, the SDs balanced street influence, legitimate business ventures, and territorial control, steadily growing to nearly 10,000 members across Chicago and its suburbs. From the late 1990s onward, the Satan Disciples solidified their influence across Chicago and suburbs. Legacy chapters like Heart of Chicago Little Village, Brighton Park, Sleepy Hollow, Back of the Yards, and Gage Park remain central. Suburban presence continues in places like Cicero, Aurora, Blue Island, and others, with some sections closing due to law enforcement or strategic realignment. SDs evolved into a structured criminal organization, combining street dominance with legitimate businesses, community influence, and prison networks. Conflicts with rival gangs continue sporadically, but SDs maintain strongholds in historical territories, particularly along 18th Street in heart of Chicago/West Pilsen, 24th Street in Marshall Square, and West Town. Today, the Satan Disciples are recognized as one of the largest street gangs originating from Chicago, with thousands of members, entrenched neighborhoods, and a history that stretches from 1959 to the present, surviving decades of wars, leadership changes, and citywide transformation.